Gina Sam, Alcott, John Colton, Robbie Carrick, Anima Sue, Trina Nadella, Aidan, Libby Rainey, Amy Goodman, with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. You listen to the BLAINESWORLD show, heard each Wednesday morning here on the new WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at www.wpvmfm.org. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as positive news and information about people and organizations in the Asheville area. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first guests, Michael Lilly and Julianne Ornell, is it? Welcome aboard, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, great. I should mention that Michael Lilly is a member in good standing. I'm glad we added that, they're in good standing, of the Society of Directors and Choreographers. He is a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and has staged close to 150 theatrical productions in New York, California, North Carolina. He has worked in television as a dialogue coach for NBC, ABC, 20th Century Fox, and Sony. He was nominated for a Los Angeles Drama Critics Circle Award for direction. Julianne Ornell is a graduate of the Pacific Conservatory of Performing Arts in Santa Maria, California. Since arriving in Asheville in 2014, she's had the pleasure of working with MPP, ACT, Magnetic Theater, and one of the players. And the question I ask, I'll first turn to Julianne, and I'll ask Michael this question. But how did you get into theater?
I got into theater at a very, very early age. My father was a high school teacher, biology and chemistry. We had fantastic babysitters because he was always picked the most fun kids in his class. And we had a woman named Christy Trotter who used to babysit for us, and she got a job with the local high school theater doing the makeup designs for Pippin, and my brother and I went and saw all the high school kids putting on the Pippin face makeup, and I was hooked at that point. So the next year I auditioned for Sound of Music and played Little Gretel. So I started off in the local high school productions, and then eventually I moved on. There's a company called Lambs Players Theater in Coronado in San Diego, and it's a professional non-equity company, and I became sort of their resident child actor. So I got to do Anne Frank and Miracle Worker and all those great roles for kids.
Would really be cool if we get Michael or somebody else to do Sound of Music again, and you wouldn't be Little Gretel anymore, but you could be Big Gretel. Wouldn't that be cool to revisit it?
I have two nieces. They're ready to play Gretel and some of the younger characters.
Have you ever done Sound of Music again?
No, it's been 30 some odd years, yeah.
And I always wondered, that must be fun for an actor to do a role and then revisit it sometime later.
I had that opportunity at ACT when I was in college. I worked on Crimes of the Heart, and
Right.
I played Babe, the youngest sister, and then just a couple summers ago I played the eldest sister. And it's neat because you've got this overlay when you hear the words. You can sort of hear what your friends did 20, 30 years ago, and then you're also in the present moment with what people are doing. So it's, there's a richness to it.
A fun thing to it. And I'll turn to Michael. I'll ask you the same question. Michael, I've known for several years, very talented actor, director. kind of does it all in theater. How do you get the bug?
Well, we had been, my mom and sister and I had been living outside of Atlanta, and we moved up to North Carolina. And I started the 5th grade in North Carolina, and one of my good friends, became one of my good friends, was a fellow named Randy Jones, who wound up becoming the cowboy in the Village People. He was the original cowboy in Village People. I still keep in touch with Randy, and Randy was into theater, and I was new. I just moved to the area, and we used to walk home from school together and talk. And one day he said, "I'm going to go audition for a play. You want to come along?" And I thought, okay, I don't really know what that is, but I went, and got bitten by the bug. And
What play was that?
it was called The Inexperienced Ghost. And the thing that I remember the most about it is that we forgot our lines. And we were standing on stage, and we had a teacher as a prompter who started yelling the line, "My God, you're cold as death. My God, you're cold as death." And finally Randy turned and said, "We know the line, we don't know who says it."
Well, that's also cool too, because you talk about the name of the play. You were certainly an experienced actor.
Absolutely.
At time.
No question.
And I'm thinking also what Julianne had mentioned too. Boy, would that be fun if you ever play, or is it still around?
Well, the flashbacks may be too much to handle. It probably is somewhere. I probably still have a copy of the script in a trunk, somewhere.
Did you eventually learn the lines?
Yes, we did. I mean, it was, I think we got to do like 3 performances of that play. And I think by the 3rd one, performance, everybody remembered their lines.
So take it from there, Michael. You start out in that particular show, and then you sort of have gone into all aspects of theater since then. How do you move up the progression?
I started college when I was 17, because in Georgia, if you turned 6 before the next calendar year, they let you go ahead and start school at 5. So my birthday is December 30th, so I slipped under by 2 days. So I've always been the youngest one in my classes, and so I went to UNCG at 17, and there were a couple of seniors there at the very beginning of the year who were going to do a play, this 1-act play, Next, by Terrence McNally, and they were going to do it in the Studio Theater, and they needed somebody to direct it. And so they came to me. Well, I was a freshman. I'd been there all of 15 minutes, and they said, "Yeah, that doesn't matter. You just show up. All we want you to do really is just kind of hold the book for us. Just hold the book. Give us our lines when we need them." So I said, okay, and I sat in there, and then after 2 or 3 or 4 rehearsals, I started telling them what I thought and what I saw, and and they were kind of taken aback, and but they listened to some of it. And at that point, I thought, I don't want to stop acting, but this is fun. I'm enjoying this.
And I asked you up there, if you had the choice between directing and acting, and you told me what?
Directing, I think, because when I started directing, I didn't completely stop acting, but I didn't go on stage nearly as much as I had been. And you get rusty, and you get rusty really quickly. And, some of the same fears creep back in. I did a show at ACT in 2009, and it's actually where I met Jeff Messer, one of the writers of Robin Hood. And, I hadn't been on stage in 15 years. And I was, talk about, it's rusty, It's something you need to do a lot, all the time.
Well then, and I also saw you at a Parkway, I guess a year or 2 years ago. You were just fantastic on Golden Pond, and that was not a small, easy role, but you were great in that.
No, it wasn't, but I think I'm I'm a curmudgeon. I have been for a long time, and so is Norman Thayer. And you know, it was a good fit. I think that role was a good fit for me. And also, I have to say, Jeff Messer, my friend Jeff Messer, directed me in that play, and he has a way of just making you relax and feel good about what you're doing. Um, so I really enjoy working with him.
And Julianne, you said that almost kind of it was an interesting twist that you actually prefer the acting part of the theater as opposed to directing.
I do. I like the limited scope of responsibility. I've directed in the past, and you're very dependent on managing the group and whether or not people follow through on what they say they're going to do. And yeah, I don't like to be responsible for things I don't have control over.
And segue, it's funny you say that because it ties into the show that you both are now involved in, Robin Hood at Montford Park, and that your point was a very good one about having control over stuff. Michael, you had no control over the weather, you had no control over other things as you're preparing for the show, but somehow you put it all together. Let's talk about that show.
Well, let me say, get out there to see Robin Hood at Montford Park. There are times when things just sort of, I don't know, they transcend what you've set out to do, and this is one of those times. And it has to do with every single person who worked on Robin Hood in any capacity. It's just, the other night, Sunday night, we had 560 people out there, and the show just sort of took on a life of its own. And it's all the good work of everybody in it, and also Montford Park for 48 years, they've been doing theater for free. They've been offering it for free, and no less than a dozen people over the course of that first weekend came to me and said, if I couldn't bring my kids to see theater for free, they wouldn't see theater, because I can't afford it. I can't afford it for my kids. I can't afford it for me. So thank God for Montford Park players.
And talk about the play, again, Robin Hood. So this is a version of Robin Hood written by Jeff Messer or co-written? Or what's the
Jeff
story behind
Messer and Robert Akers wrote this, and they wrote it back in 2000, and they've tinkered with it, like good writers do. They go back in, they change things, they improve things, they make, things slightly different. It's been done a couple of times. This is not the first time it's been done, but this is the first time it's been done outdoors. And you couldn't have a better setting for it than the Hazel Robinson Amphitheater. It's just, it's the perfect.
You are in Sherwood Forest. You're surrounded
Well,
by it.
also, Julianne, I'll ask you too, and then we'll talk about your role in the play itself, but it's also, I'd say, a very family-friendly show.
Definitely, yes, and we even have a family. The Watkins family are part of the cast, and that has just made the rehearsal process all the more wonderful, I think. It's a different feeling when you have kids in the cast than when it's all adults.
How many Watkins are in it?
5?
At last count. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike and Angelica and three of their kids who were featured. I mean, one of their kids plays the violin in this. Another one has lines. Another one chases the evil queen at the end of the show. I mean,
I always wonder
they're a
about
big
that.
part of it.
I always wonder about that. Is it more challenging or less challenging when you play with a member of your family? By the mother, father, spouse, significant other. I wonder how that works out. Have you ever had to do that or play with a relative, niece, nephew, anybody?
Way back in the day, my brother and I played the children in South Pacific together. Yeah, and it was fun.
Oh, that was a big, important role too, the two children.
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
love that show.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy being with your brother?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's fun to be able to pal around backstage, and you've sort of got a shorthand communication already established. I think most people would say it's easier to work with people that you know because you've already got that trust and just a common way of approaching things.
Did you run lines with your brother too?
All the time.
So-
He ran them with me. He's got a great memory. I don't, so he ran them with me to make sure I wouldn't forget.
Oh, great show. I'd love to Let's do South Pacific sometime again soon.
There we go.
I just love it.
In 1972, my sister and I were in a production of Hamlet. I played Laertes, she played Ophelia. Also in the production, this was in Raleigh, North Carolina, was David Sedaris, who was, I think, probably around 15 years old at the time. And he subsequently wrote in one of his books, Naked, one of the first books that came out that he wrote about that production. So,
Did he mention you at least?
yes. As a matter of fact, I got not by name, thankfully. Not by name, thankfully, but
The guy who couldn't remember his lines. No.
no, I remembered him in that show.
That's something. Have you ever, with your wife, who's very talented, she's a faculty member at theater, she's a writer, she does lots of stuff. Does your wife act also?
She did. She used to. She hadn't been on stage in a very long time. When we both moved out to Los Angeles in 1978, we both sort of went out there thinking, that we'd like to try to work in the business as actors. And Brenda auditioned, and she got into some good classes and studied with some good people. And then she just started writing and got together with a partner, a couple of different writing partners, and started having some success. And by that time, I was mostly directing. Every now and then, I would do something, but I did a lot of production work out there too. I would go and work in some production capacity on a TV show or a film, so that I could make money to go do a play. And that I did that pretty much the whole time I was out there. Started out working in props, and then I worked in wardrobe for a while, and then I became a dialogue coach. And that's what you make good money doing that stuff. And I would take the money I made and then go and produce a play with it.
And when you say you're a dialogue coach, for the benefit of our listeners who don't know what that is, what is it?
Well, especially in television, lots of times directors are sort of jobbed in for episodes. Some shows have maybe one or two or three directors, and they take turns. One is directing an episode while the other one is prepping the next episode. But most of the time, the directors really only deal with the series regulars. So any guest star that's coming in, or kid, or I worked on a show called Fame LA, and they had a lot of dancers and singers. Well, they'd never really acted before. So you take the script, you get together with those people, you break down their scenes, you talk through how their characters relate to all of the series regulars, and you basically work to have them ready to go when it's time to shoot their scenes. I worked on a show called Second Noah, which was on ABC. That show had 6 kids on it, ranging in age from 16 down to 6 years old. The 16-year-old was Jimmy Marsden, who's now on Westworld and has done a ton of things. A great guy, really nice guy, and a good actor too when he was 16. On that show, anytime any of those kids from Jimmy on down were, on the schedule to work, I had to make the time to get together with them first, break the scenes down, and it was, in Jimmy's case, I didn't have a whole lot to do. I mean, the kid was just really good, but some of the other kids were younger, and since there were younger kids in the show that were regulars, there were also younger kids who would come in as, to be their friends and guest star, and I worked, on that show I got to work with Ben Vereen and Lloyd Bridges and Charles Nelson Riley. And
Does it translate if you see somebody as a child actor, if you see Julianne or you see somebody else when she was a child, does it translate that the person's, if they're good as a kid, they're going to be a good actor as an adult?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, there was one kid on Second Noah who was like 6 years old, but and they never gave him a scene where he had more than 3 or 4 lines, but he always knew the lines, and he always delivered them. And you know what they told me on that show, the producers on that show said, we don't want a kid in a can. You know, that was the term they used. Don't give us a kid in a can. Give us a kid that's a part of, you know, the show and is present. And some, you know, some of the kids were better at it than others. But I think you're right. I mean, I think sometimes you know, you sort of know, wow, this kid's good.
I think there's a big difference too between when the impetus for involvement comes from the child. Like I remember my parents weren't encouraging me to do this.
Which is nice, I guess,
I
though.
was dragging them by the hand,
Right.
and they wanted to facilitate, you know, me having exposure to this interest I had. I think when you run into trouble is when you've got the, you know, stereotypical stage parent who's sort of pushing their child in the limelight. Oftentimes that doesn't work out too well.
And so you didn't have it. But you know, Julianne, and I'm actually, when I see Robin Hood, I'll look at it also. I contend a really good director is somebody who can direct children also, because what's really exciting to me when you see the children and they're actively involved in the play rather than just sitting like a lump, or you know,
Yes.
and they're enthusiastic.
Yes.
And we saw the other day, Michael, I was telling you off there, a Parkway, and I just remember there were just a couple of children who stood out. You know, you could see them smiling, you could see them active, and said, wow, that was kind of exciting.
They get really absorbed in the world of the play. They're not just waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Their own imagination is activated, and everything stems from that.
But you see them really into it, you know, and it's very exciting. Talking about being into performances also, back to your role in, your role is what?
Like Marion.
Okay, very exciting.
Yeah.
How is it performing outside?
I love it. I absolutely
Had you ever
love
done it before?
I worked with Montfort back in 2015. I was in their production of Richard III and in Midsummer Night's Dream, so I had done it before. And it's pretty magic to be doing Midsummer Night's Dream outdoors and have the fireflies come up. Also, just you spend so much time rehearsing. It's nice to be outdoors in a beautiful park rather than inside a dark theater.
How about when the rain comes, though?
Well, when the rain comes, we all whine and complain, but looking back at it, it was a real bonding experience for the cast, and I actually sort of have fond memories of working through the rain, and that just everyone having a commitment to the show that says, it's raining, but it doesn't matter, we're going to keep pushing through.
Well, it was amazing, too, even opening night. I heard, wasn't there opening night, but it was raining, and then half the audience had newspapers over their heads or umbrellas or whatever. They stayed.
They wanted to see what happened next, so
Okay.
that's exciting.
So is that the attitude, come rain or shine, just about? Because John told me one time I interviewed him, he said very few shows ever get rained out at Montfort somehow, you know.
Well, there were a couple of rehearsals where it rained so hard. I mean, it started pouring down rain. And I said, stop. And one of the reasons is Robin Hood it's about 14 scenes, 8 in the first act, 6 in the second act. Half of them